Hey guys, this is Giselle, who plays Zoe Baker, and you're listening to the Residents of Evil podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Residents of Evil podcast. Today we are joined by Giselle Gilbert. Giselle was the voice and performance capture for Zoe Baker in Resident Evil 7. Before we begin, I would just like to let everybody know that the ROE podcast is available on iTunes and also on Android services like CastBox and Libsyn. I would also like to make a big announcement. ROE Team member Jeff has started an all-new podcast titled Beyond the Fandom. So if you're a fan of this podcast and you would like to hear more covering a wider variety of fandom, definitely check it out. I'll leave a link down in the description. Alright, with that being said, let's start the show.
You did good, Ethan.
Zoe, right? What the fuck are you?
Shut up and listen if you want to stay alive. You gotta get out of that house.
So thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time out of your day and coming on the show here.
Of course, thanks for having me.
I'm glad we got you. Zoe was a very impactful character in 7. Kind of like the guiding hope for Ethan. And so much, though, that she got her own DLC, which was nice. Sort of. It was all about her, but you only got to see a little bit of her. So we'll get into the discussion about that. First thing I want to do is obviously welcome you on and maybe give a little bit of your history to the people who are listening.
Well, my name is Giselle. I've been acting for a while. I'm from LA, so I've been sort of immersed in the arts for a long time. I started in theater and I acted a lot in theater, started producing theater, and then kind of swung more into doing film and television. And when I was in college, I took a voiceover class from a woman named Vicki Lewis, who's an amazing actress and voiceover actress. And it kind of inspired me, and it made me realize that I have a voice that can do many different characters, and it wasn't something I knew about myself before. Huh. So that was cool. And then I started getting into voiceover, which is so fun. And now I'm here.
How much work have you done in voiceover? I know 7 is the big one, Resident Evil 7. What else have you been part of?
In terms of voiceover for animation, not like that's pretty much it. I did a lot of commercial stuff.
Okay.
But with Resident Evil, it was actually pretty crazy. They emailed me out of the blue to come audition. I had no idea what I was auditioning for. And I definitely did not think I got the part because I thought the director hated me when I went in.
No.
And then I got a call back and I walked out of the room of the callback and I was just like, nope. That's it. Well, that was cool. It would have been a nice thing to do. Still didn't know what I was auditioning for. And this has never happened to me ever. And this is not, I don't think any of my friends have really had this happen, but the producer of the project came out right after I left. And before I left the building, offered me the part, which was really, really amazing.
Same day, just walked out. Hey, don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. Because usually you have to wait a week or two. And,
right.
So it was cool.
That's awesome. Had you worked with the studio before? I know, is it House of Move, right? That did the studio that did the voice and the mocap?
Yeah, it was House of Moves. I hadn't worked with them before. I've worked with them since on different projects, but
yeah, we're seeing that trend with them that once you're in the door with them, you come back a lot. So
yeah, I think having experience in motion capture is really important, and personalities, being able to just go with the flow is such a big part of motion capture, being able to improv. And so I think they like to use people they've worked with before.
Cool.
It's a smart move for them to do that because we've had other actors here on the show that have done pretty much said the same thing. They've done both motion capture and the voice for the characters. They're very animated type people themselves. Either they're fit, they're into martial arts, or they've been actors on stage. And pretty much, with motion capture and acting on stage, you have to just use what's around you to sell yourself, sell what you're doing.
Totally. You don't get to rely on your face. You have to rely on your actions, right?
Speaking of stage, all your theater work, what was your favorite play or theater part?
That's a good question. I think that, part of the thing I love about theater are the costumes. They tend to be lavish, and I got to do Dangerous Liaisons in college. And I played Cecile, and I got to have a custom made corset and like gowns. And it was just, I mean, the part is not, how can I say this? I play an ingenue, for those who are not familiar with the play that also got turned into a film. Uma Thurman played Cecile in the film. She's like 15, and a bunch of terrible stuff happens to her. So it's not like a great emotional thing.
Right.
But I mean, it's a good meaty role, but the costumes are beautiful, and it was very fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Were you familiar at all with the franchise before getting this part? Was this something you'd even like heard about in passing or anything?
Oh yeah, I mean, Resident Evil is pretty famous.
Yeah.
And I worked as a producer, I worked for a Japanese film company for a couple of years. So not only was I familiar with Resident Evil, I was really familiar with Capcom.
Okay. So you knew,
wow.
A lot of people we hear is, well, I knew the movies, but I didn't know about the games or one or the other. But you knew the world in general. You knew both.
Yeah, and I have two older brothers who are avid gamers, so I'm pretty familiar with. I never really played myself, but I would watch them play games.
Interesting.
So. Yeah.
That's usually what we hear is people who have seen the games before. It's usually from an older brother or something that played the games, and then that's usually how people get into them.
Yeah, and I've heard this. I know that this one is supposed to be extremely scary. I cannot watch any of my own work, like even if it's a film. I can't watch it. But I've heard this is like a terrifying game, and it really sort of goes back to the roots of Resident Evil. Which is cool.
Yeah, totally. This is something that a lot of people wanted for a while, because originally when this game was, it didn't have the title Resident Evil 7 at that point. It was just called the Kitchen Demo, and at the demos at like the big game conventions and everything, when people were going to try out this virtual reality stuff, because this is virtual reality. It's like, it's kind of like you are in that world. So they're like, look, if it gets too much for you, just tap out. We'll come over. We'll get the thing off you and everything. Don't worry. And I couldn't find really any footage of people playing it for the longest time, but a lot of people were literally scared because of just how realistic, like they saw everything and how it was happening. So. I mean, I don't have VR. I haven't tried it in VR, but just from playing it by itself, your character did fantastic in it, in both the main game, the DLC, and everybody else involved. Like, they sold the real horror experience that a lot of the fans have wanted to see back in a Resident Evil game.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's great. Sure. That's awesome.
So Giselle, you should. I was going to say you should give it a shot just to see kind of how your performance and everybody you worked with performance actually came together. It's really cool to just see like. I don't know, all the work that went into it and the final project. It's got its moments where it's scary, but it's really cool.
I mean, I've seen trailers and I've seen snippets of it. When we wrapped, we definitely saw like the animation of it. I just haven't played it.
Okay.
Yeah, you actually have two, besides the main core game, which you're, like I said, a driving influence behind it. You're giving the main character direction and setting me on the path. But you have two DLCs. You've got the Daughter's DLC, which introduces how all this happened to the Bakers, and then you've got the End of ZOE, which is the conclusion to your story. So yeah, you're very important to the game.
Yeah, and I was actually very happy. I mean, there's a lot of things about this particular project I didn't know about. I didn't know I was filming Resident Evil 7 for 8 months. I was working on the project for 8 months before I found out. Everything was super secretive.
Right.
Which I understand. Obviously, they didn't want anything to get leaked. And when I found out, I was stoked. I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" It was really cool. But yeah, I had no idea that what I was working on. And you filmed, I think, on and off for 2 years, and I had no idea whether I was going to live or die. Right. It was all very hush hush. And so in the end, when I survived, it was a miracle.
You had one of the scariest ones too. That the Daughter's DLC is pretty intense, with the evolution of the Bakers transforming into the monsters they become is heartbreaking, but also very scary.
Yeah, like when my dad beats the shit out of me, that's terrifying.
Yeah, I was actually just playing a little bit ago to get a refresher, because it's been a while since I played it. I was like, wow, that's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, when we were filming that, it was even scary because obviously with motion capture, you're actually doing all the movements. So I got thrown on the ground and you have to scream, and my voice is very raw at the end of the day. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I imagine all the strain on your voice, the different vocal things you have to do, screaming, grunting, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so awkward with all that, that whole suit on, the rig on your head, and it's there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, and especially
Very
if
physical.
Exactly. If you're doing anything physical, if you're being thrown, if you're doing any battle sequences, like I can't tell you how many times we had to cut and just like totally throw away a take because someone hit a camera that was on the set. You know what I
You have
mean?
this giant contraption on your head that's just is bad.
It doesn't make moving easy by any means.
Right. I've heard the story. Sarah said that you, I think she said it was you, had linked up with somebody, got your or maybe it was Katie. Somebody had linked their headsets together and basically, when they pulled away, I guess broke them.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I think I feel like that might have happened a couple times because it definitely happened to me. I might have happened to someone else as well, but
right. So you said you got just out of the blue got emailed, I guess, or got a phone call or something about. So how did you actually get the part?
Yeah, so I got the audition via email, and I was surprised. I wasn't submitted on it. I don't know how familiar you guys are with how acting stuff works, but usually your agent will submit you, you'll get an audition or not, but I wasn't submitted, so they reached out to me personally, not to my agent, and asked me to come in, and so I didn't really know what it was, and I think the first time I actually wasn't even in town. I was in France. Oh, wow. And then I think they messaged me again, like maybe a month or two later, and had me come in. And that's when I came in and read for the role.
So they were really serious about wanting you they were really serious about you for this project.
Yeah. And I think part of it is too that obviously the body type is really important when you're doing motion capture, like your size, how tall you are, your shape, whatever. But also, they were looking for people who had a lot of theater experience and would be able to own stage and knew how to move their bodies and, were connected with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So and you said that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said that you didn't think the director liked you at all. What exactly made you think that?
So I went in for the callbacks and I read the scene, and then the producer and the director sort of like whispered to each other, and I heard the producer say, "No, come on, like let her do it this one more way." And he was like, "Okay." And so I did. And I heard that. I was like, "Oh God, he hated me." He's like, "No, I don't want to."
Oh yeah.
But maybe he was just saying, "Oh, this is fine." And she's like, "Well, let's just let her read it one other time just to make sure." Right. I don't know.
That's what happens when they whisper. Then you start thinking you hear something wrong, and it gets to your head.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
Well, at least it was a good outcome. Yeah, it must have just been a misunderstanding.
Obviously, they knew who you were, and then you obviously impressed them. So.
Well, and the director's wonderful. I've been working on a different project with him for the last couple months.
Nice.
Released in January, but I can't tell you what it is.
Okay. Ooh, interesting.
Cool.
That's very exciting. Yeah, he's amazing. He's a really cool dude. He's directed tons of video games, and his project, I think it's called Hero, just got into Sundance for a VR type thing. Anyway, it's very cool.
Oh, interesting.
Cool. Yeah.
What was his name?
A VR.
Naveed Kansari?
Yeah, Naveed.
Oh, it's Naveed, okay.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
I've heard good things about him. Obviously, his work from 7, the acting alone is incredible. The cutscenes, the characters, everything was great. But I've heard a lot of news about him, just in general, just being a great director.
He's awesome. Like, I can't get over how good he is, and he's really intent on having good acting over technical aspects of the game.
Okay.
And I think with this particular game, it was important because of how dynamic all the characters are and how intense the scenes are. And he really wanted to ramp up that horror. And I think he just took time with us, which was really nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we've heard he kind of knows his history on Resident Evil as well, and kind of knew how he wanted the characters to act and stuff like that. So he probably was very helpful with directing, you guys, but he also had a vast experience of sort of the history of the game. So
absolutely,
he seemed to be very knowledgeable from what we've heard.
Right.
Yeah, he's great.
Good things. So this one comes from Mr. Yayas, and you said you had never played a Resident Evil game, but you have seen them, right?
Yes. I think, I mean, I've definitely seen the games played before. I knew the characters. I'd heard of the movies. I think I probably saw the first 2 movies when I was a kid. I don't even remember when they came out, but I'm aware of the franchise.
Okay.
Bob Harskins asks, how much did you know about the character before getting the role? And how did you think these experiences has changed the ZOE as a character?
Let's see. I mean, I didn't know anything about. Like I said, I didn't even know I was filming Resident Evil for 8 months, so I had no idea what I was doing. I knew that she was supposed to be, I think, early 20s, maybe like late, like 19, 20, 21. And I knew that there was tension with her family. And I knew that she sort of was a loner. Yeah. And I think that, that goes to show with everything she's doing when she's trying to help Ethan. It's like, that's not the first person that's come out here, and
right.
She's done this before, and she's seen other people fail. And I don't think that she had a lot of hope in Ethan, but then that switches. And I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And they probably let you know too, that she was, she had a Southern accent. So, yeah. How was that fun trying to sort of do the Southern accent?
It was. And so when we first started, we had a really cool vocal coach come in and would sit down with all the cast, and we're like, all right, we're going to have Cajun accents. That was the goal.
Okay.
And I don't know how familiar you guys are with Cajun accents, but it's difficult. It's not easy.
It's extremely difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
It's not just a Southern accent. It's a whole different thing. Like, the only time I ever heard Cajun accents was from Gambit, from the old, 90s X-Men TV show, because he's Cajun. So that's the only time I've ever heard it. And I was like, yeah, it's very different. So in this game, I was like, oh, man, these guys, they've nailed it. This is good stuff.
Even that, you've got Creole, which is like a whole new language. So
yeah, I mean, and I think that if you speak French, you have a much easier time with the Cajun accent because you use all the same vowels, but I don't speak French. And what we realized, I think, when we first started was that you can't really understand a Cajun accent.
Yeah, it's rough.
You can't. So we tried it at first with Cajun, and we realized this is just not workable. People aren't going to understand what, any of the characters are saying. So we kind of lightened it up and sort of did a Mississippi Delta kind of standard Louisiana accent.
Right.
And I think with ZOE, because she's such a loner, in my head, I'm like, okay, she doesn't want to be from here. She doesn't want to be around these people. And I think that she sort of loses her accent when she's alone, but when she's with her family or she's angry or she's passionate about something, you really hear that accent come out.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you about that. I noticed that just playing End of ZOE from the beginning, which actually leads me into another topic I want to discuss.
Sure.
You said she had put her faith and started to realize that Ethan could very well pull this off. And then he makes his decision, which the game gives you the decision for some reason. And it doesn't matter what decision you make. It usually ends up the same way for ZOE. But you can hear, like you said, when she's mad, that accent comes out strong. But when she's by herself or in a calm situation, she starts to lose it. I noticed that. I picked up on it. So...
Yeah, that's very good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, if I'm in LA, especially being an actor, I know a ton of people that aren't from the States and have accents. And I've noticed that, you lose your accent when you're away from home, when you're not around your family. Right. I have friends from Texas who I went to school with who don't have an accent. And then all of a sudden they talk to their grandmother on the phone for an hour and then it
comes back out. Yeah.
So I think that, you get to see that passionate side of ZOE, and it gives another layer to the character.
Definitely. Yeah, that's good work on your part, because not a lot of people notice that. But now that you say that, that is what I hear a lot of, my relatives and stuff do.
Yeah.
When they talk to me, you hear that accent sort of disappear.
Totally.
So how do you think the experiences in the game changed ZOE from being a loner, not really outcasted, but wanting to separate from her family? And we find out that these events took place over 3 years, which is she was surviving the whole time. How do you think she went from the beginning to the end?
Well, I think a lot is seen from the beginning when she first starts helping Ethan. I think that she's skeptical. But by the time the Mia Zoe choice happens, and you're basically driven to choose Mia over Zoe. And if you choose Zoe, she dies anyway, or doesn't die, but you think she dies.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's really heartbreaking for her. She finally had some hope. She finally trusted someone. She got so close, and then he chooses Mia, and it really devastates her. And I think that after that, she does lose a lot of hope, and she doesn't see the light. And then I think in the end of Zoe DLC, when he calls her and you hear his voice on the other end of the phone, I think it's like a mix of shock and just like total joy.
Right.
That the fact that she could, he didn't quit on her. And this is like the one person who never gave up and was able to, bring her out of this thing.
I tried. I picked Zoe as many times as I can. I was gonna say I was a big fan of Mia after she cut Ethan's arm off and stabbed him a few times. I was like, all right, I like Zoe better.
Yeah, she literally put a screwdriver through his hand. Yeah. She nailed him to the wall with a screwdriver.
And then she cut the hand off.
Oh, it makes you do crazy things.
Right? So does being possessed by an evil little girl. But yeah, and a lot of people are trying to ship the Ethan Zoe relationship, so maybe we'll see something out of that down the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, if you can imagine being like a 19 or 20-year-old girl and having this like hunky soldier man come and talk to you and try to save you and then end up saving you. I can imagine there'd be something in the future for them, but I don't know for sure.
So Silverbolt had asked, when initially auditioning, did you know the roles for Resident Evil, which we cleared up that you didn't know for 8 months. So Silver, we kind of got your question there. We already answered it. So we're going to move on to Prism Skull. Prism Skull says, great work as Zoe. She became my new favorite character. I wanted to ask how the entire experience of becoming the character of Zoe was. It
was really cool. I think that the more we learned about these characters and what was going on, the more impactful it was. And just working with all the other actors. I love Sarah so much. I think she's amazing. I love her dog. I don't know if you guys use Instagram, but you should check out her dog.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she loves that dog like with all her heart. It's great.
Ruben had a cameo during her interview, so he had a little shout out of his own.
Yeah, she's such a wonderful person, and Ethan is the man who played Ethan as Todd is really, really wonderful. Everyone, it was such a family because it took so long to make the game. Like I said, it was like on and off for 2 years. We really became a family. And I think that when that happens, when you have those big blow up scenes and you have the big fights, and I have this guy that I've talked to for the past 2 years who's been so gentle and kind, he's playing my father, come and beat the shit out of me. It does actually have an emotional impact.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, definitely it plays through. And the cast is amazing. Everybody has been so incredible just talking with everybody. How open you guys are to working with us and doing the interviews and participating, and just it's been just a joy working with everybody.
Aw, thanks. I'm sure they all feel the same way. I know I feel the same way about you guys.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jorge Della Torre asks, how is it? We kind of talked about this a little bit more, but I guess you can go into more detail about it. It goes, they ask, how is it to be inside a motion capture suit, and how do you feel with your performance with doing all that?
It's sweaty. That's for sure. We finally, there's a couple things. One, I realized that when you put your hands in gloves and you get them wrapped in several different ways. And I'm a small person, but I realized I had to get like the medium or large gloves because otherwise when they taped them, I'd have these talons for hands because they'd be like so squeezed. And I would get so grumpy by the end of the project because I was just so uncomfortable. Right. So when they're like, I think for the first couple hours, the motion capture suits are comfortable, but after that, you just like want to get everything off of your body. I've got very sensitive skin, so it's like not the most pleasant thing. And like, because you have the balls on them, and like I said, the cameras, they're very clunky. It's hard to walk properly, but it's fun, and you do what you can.
What is the suit made out of? Is it nylon or is it like a synthetic rubber or something?
I don't know.
Kind of the same
something uncomfortable.
Is it similar like the neoprene, like the suit you would wear or something? I don't know. Like
I think just depending on the manufacturer, they probably are made out of different things.
I feel like they would be so restricting. Just like you said, by the end of the day, I'd be like, no, get this off of me.
Yeah.
Well, it's also funny because, working at different studios, House Moves is wonderful. They have a bunch of different sizes. Instead of just like small, medium, large, they have a tall, small for us, like girls who are more than average height. Although I'm not. I'm like 5'6", but whatever. So tall, smalls are wonderful because they actually fit my length and my width. But there's some studios that don't, and like you're trying on all sorts of stuff, and like the smalls are too short, and then you have to get a medium, but then you have to tape the medium so it fits you. It's just the whole thing.
Like a headache. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. But
I heard they have a big studio too. It's like size of 2 football fields, or at least 1.
House of Moves?
Yeah, the Void, I think is what they called it.
Yeah, they actually recently moved spaces. I'm trying to remember what the old space looks like, and I'm having trouble. But yes, it's very, very big.
Interesting. It'd be cool to check that out someday.
Yeah, it would be fun to see that whole process. I'll take the next question here. Zeke Guerrera asks, what was the most fun you've had during the recording process? That's a good question.
Yeah, definitely.
Hi, Zeke. Let me tell you. I think, it's hard. It was it was a long time ago. We did it for so long. I think that the stuff with Sarah was really fun, and the stuff with Evie was really fun. I love Paula as well. But some of the funniest, I'm not going to say the fun, but the funniest things happened in ADR when we were re-recording lines because of, interruptions or like airplane sounds or whatever. We'd be in the ADR booth and we'd have Capcom via Skype, and we'd have the director and the producers here. And like, it's the breathing. You have to do so many different types of breathing noises. And it would be like, okay, you have to go slower. Okay. And then I remember at one point, someone from Capcom said something to their English translator, and the English translator like paused. They were giving me notes on like how to breathe properly. And I was like, what's going on? He goes, they say less porno. And I was like, oh, okay, gotcha. Because you like moan, but don't moan too hard. You're being stabbed, but it's coming from the gut. Right. It's just like, what do you do? I was like, okay.
A little less sexual.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good notes, I guess.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. And I heard they had to do they were doing a lot of acting on their part to show you this is how we want it. And
it's really funny to hear a man try to be a young woman who's being hit by her father.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Might leave a impression.
Yes, exactly.
That's funny. So the next one comes from Mayor Burb. It says, hello, Giselle. Wonderful work as Zoe. Your delivery of her character felt both unnerving yet reassuring as the game carried through, and it was tragic to see how things would turn out for her. I guess this is back before we knew what the final result was. I mean, yeah, it's tragic, the story, but it does have a happy ending. What would you say was your most enjoyable moment during your voicing, which we already talked about that? Are there any particular scenes with fellow voice actors or certain scenes that you like the most, I guess?
Honestly, one of the standouts for me is that the Zoe Mia choice scene.
Okay.
And I remember we did it a couple of different times, and we were trying to get the size of the canoe right so that we could it was all very complicated, set wise, to build out that scene and make sure that I was actually in the boat and not in the water. But I remember the choice happening, and the one that they chose was the last take that we took of that particular scene. And I remember how I was crying and Katie was crying, and we were all just crying after it. She was crying because I didn't get chosen. I was crying because I didn't get chosen, but I was also crying because I was happy for her. But it was just a big mess. And you don't think, when you're sitting in a gray room or standing in a gray room with a bunch of balls on your body wearing a motion capture suit, or you're definitely not in the scene, not like a movie. To be able to get to those emotional places is really special, and Nivi did a wonderful job sort of navigating us through that and guiding us there.
Excellent.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's probably why they want you back for stuff, is because not every actor can do that. Pull those emotions, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm just really sensitive.
That's good.
That's good. And that kind of ties into Misty Illusion 4's question. Wants to know what your experience was with the cast.
The cast is amazing. Jesse, it was actually funny. Jesse did a movie with two of my friends.
Okay.
And so I knew of him before I met him. And when I saw him on set, I was like, oh, hi, weird. And, Todd, who plays Ethan, is just the most warm-hearted guy that I've ever met. Katie's really cool. I adore her. Sarah, again, amazing. The whole cast was really, really wonderful. And we really improv'd a lot of it. Everyone was up for everything. And it's nice. It really is like theater. You have this little family at the end of it. And it was really sad to let it all go when it was over.
Yeah, it's a lot of time. I mean, it's 2 years spending with everybody, just putting the work and becoming these characters. Like you said, becoming a family, and then having to let it go when it's all done.
It's sad.
Yeah.
But, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that only did Ethan and I survive? Did Mia survive?
Mia survived, yeah.
She'll survive if you choose her. So, if you choose her.
Right. If you choose her. Well, I guess you have to choose her either way. Or you don't win the game.
Or you don't get the happy ending.
But I think only the three of us survived, so it'll be interesting to see if we get to come back.
Yeah,
going forward, they definitely might explore your characters again. They left it open for that.
They really did.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see if they continue in the same area or if they decide to go after completely different characters that have nothing to do. You know what I mean? I have no idea.
Right. Sarah had said there was a lot of improv, like you had said too. There's a lot of improv. With her was a lot more profanity. So a lot more darkness to her. Was there anything that you improv particularly that you remember that you liked?
It was a while ago. I wish that I could say I remember. I think that nothing was too far off from what you see is pretty much. I mean, it was in script. There would be like little tweaks of words, moments where like a movement happened. If you jump away from, like when I jumped away from my dad, I remember there was a scene where I start having like this sort of scaly skin thing happen in the bathroom, and I wash off. I think my father. I was either my father or my mom comes after me, and like I remember they did that, and I did not see the other actor behind me, and he literally scared the shit out of me. And I like screamed and I like jumped up, and they didn't that wasn't it wasn't written that way, but just because of like actually being frightened, I was able to
being in the moment.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah,
it worked out.
Awesome.
It did.
The Justinator asks, what was it like voice acting in one of the most popular horror series? So I guess reflecting back on now that you know what it is and you had such a big role in it, how did that feel? What was it like?
It was really special. I mean, especially because I don't have a ton of experience in animation. To be able to be a part of such a landmark game, it's really cool. And I'm really grateful to everyone who played it and the fans. And, if you do want me to come back in Resident Evil 8, you just tell Capcom. But no, it was really special. It's cool to be part of a legacy like that. There's not a lot of games that you get to do that in, and I feel really lucky to be a part of it.
Right. I mean, it's such a huge franchise that's been around for so long that has so many entries in it, and to have a character in that series, and one that's as important as Zoe that actually survives too, is pretty significant. So
it is, and I would also be interested to see if, as they have with the other sort of part of Resident Evil, if they decide to make a movie out of this one, because with The Walking Dead and all of the other zombie stuff that's been so popular, it kind of goes into that realm. It's in the South. It would be really cool to see.
Interesting, because they have actually discussed they're rebooting the movie franchise, so there's no real word on what direction they're going, and usually they kind of follow the games as they come out. So it started off with the Resident Evil Mansion in the first movie, and then it kind of got into all the action of 5 and 6, and now that they're rebooting it, maybe they might do something similar to 7.
I would love to see this as a full-blown horror movie.
Oh my god, it would be so terrifying.
Yeah. It's so well done. It's scary. It's got all the elements of all the great horror movies. You've got the Hills Have Eyes. You've got the Chainsaw Massacre family. You've got seems like a little bit of Evil Dead in there. A little bit of the Japanese typical ghost movie with the little girls and all that stuff. And it's just so many great elements that were put into it to make it scary.
Yeah,
absolutely. The Capcom guys are brilliant with that kind of stuff. And I think, it would be really cool to see this live action.
Let's jump to Pupperjack Cheese, since we've kind of that's an awesome name, by the way, Pupperjack Cheese.
So cute,
right?
So delicious.
Talking about the choice, the decisions you can make between Zoe or Mia, who would you choose?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Oh, I mean, you guys, she like cut off his arm.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
I agree with you. Yeah, that's
I would like to choose myself. I've had a really hard time living with my family, and I would like to survive. I mean, it's good that they chose her because I do survive in the end anyway, so I guess we both win this way. But, I was very upset
she was
that
responsible
I
for Evie.
Yeah, she's a real cool girl, that Mia. Ruining people's lives.
I honestly had that in mind when I made the decision. I chose Zoe says like, well, yeah, it's no brainer. This girl tried to kill me and she's part of what started all this. I'm going to choose the girl that helped me. And it was just so surprised that everybody's like, I can't believe people would actually choose Zoe over your girlfriend that you went there to save. I was like, I'm going to keep that to myself. I'm completely with you on that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Pupperjack also says they love your performance.
Oh, thank you so much, little Pupperjack.
I love that name. It's awesome.
So cute.
So Radanya asks, do you think that Zoe is a secondary character who can make a comeback in the Resident Evil universe?
I'd like to think so. I mean, I think that the DLC really just leaves that wide open. Right. I can tell you, I know absolutely nothing about what's happening in the future. They haven't talked to me about it at all. But I think that would be really cool. It would be interesting to see where Zoe goes from here. She has been given a second chance at life, basically.
She really has. And, I mean, you got to think that between her and Mia and Ethan, they were all infected. So there's got to be something inside there that the new corporation or maybe the bad corporations are looking for. So if it were to pick up, I would see them being in a lab somewhere being tested, probably against their will.
Totally. Like, what made these guys different than everyone else? Why did they get to survive?
Exactly.
Yeah, because, it's interesting because Zoe survived 3 years without becoming fully like the rest of the family. And, Mia was kind of like a weird transition. So maybe it was an unstable thing because we do know that did happen to Jill in Resident Evil, like before the events of 5. She was taken and experimented on. And, what was her name? Sherry Birkin, she had the G virus embryos in her that was like the antivirus. And she got that advanced healing ability, but she still couldn't cure the other stuff. So, I mean, anything's possible. I think it'd be a good thing to bring back characters that people truly love, which they have been doing in a lot of their CGI films and later games.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it's natural selection. What makes some of us live and some of us die?
I look at it, too, is you notice that she survived so long and she has this fight in her, and it's not until Ethan makes that decision that she kind of gives up, and that's when Evie gets to take control. I mean, obviously, pick Zoe. It's probably overwhelming for Evie to just be like, no, I'm not letting you go. But if you follow the story arc where you pick Mia, it's not until that moment when she realizes that there's no hope left that's when she finally loses control of herself and submits to Evie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you can only last for so long. It's I can't even, I mean, if you think about this actually happening, of course we're talking about a video game here, but like, God, that would suck.
3 years ago. Miserable.
It was so bad. And I think that at that point, it really, like, Ethan was her last chance.
Yeah.
And if he gives up on her and she's not worth his time, then maybe it's not worth living after all. But it is.
It is. And Uncle Joe.
Yeah. Definitely.
Uncle Joe.
And you everything.
Yeah. And now, thinking about it, minor spoilers here, but that title doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think it's also end of Zoe. You think like, oh, she's dead, but also like the end of Zoe's story. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
That happened.
Well,
so.
Both of those are misleading. Not a hero for Chris, but he is the hero. And then,
they were doing a thing there. Okay, that's what it was.
I think they're just trying to, do a marketing ploy.
Yeah.
Smart marketing, that's for sure.
Get you interested in trying it out and see what happens. I mean, you should have already been anyways, but... So,
for sure.
Tony Sanz wants to know if you share any qualities with Zoe since you brought her to life.
Gosh, I mean, I think that with any character I play, I try to infuse them with as much of myself as possible. I try, even if it's like if the character on paper is so different than me, I have to think like, okay, what qualities does she have that I do have? What do we share? Because you can't approach a character thinking about your differences and like what they have that you don't, or vice versa. You're not going to get anywhere. And I think a lot of Zoe's compassion and hope comes from me. I'm a very optimistic person. And I've tried to infuse that in her. And I think that she's also very sensitive like me. But yeah, I think that a lot of what you see in Zoe is me.
Reflection of your own qualities in there, making it your own.
Yeah.
And this actually leads perfectly into the next question here. And this is a very thought-provoking question. If you were in the same, this is by Noble 1985. He asked,
Noble.
He asked, if you were in the same situation as Zoe, would you make the same decisions she did in the story? Would you be so helpful to, about the whole situation? Maybe just make the antidote for yourself. There's a lot to think about there.
There is. I mean, I think that it's a difficult thing to think about. Like, do you save yourself or do you save other people? 2 other people, in fact.
Right.
And I'd like to think that I would probably save others before myself. Although I'm learning a lot about self-care and how you're supposed to put yourself first. So I'm not sure if that's the healthiest thing to do.
Right.
Because if she saved herself, she could probably just make more of the antidote. But she's infected and not thinking clearly. But yeah, I probably would make the same choices she made. I honestly have no idea. What would you guys do? Would you guys make the same choices?
No, I would make the antidote for myself. And after 3 years of dealing with that, I'd be like, I'm out. I'm sorry. I don't know you.
Screw you guys.
I don't know you new people.
Yeah. Sorry, your problem.
You're on your own. Yep. Not my problem. I'm out of here.
Yep.
Just being honest.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been the smart thing for her to do.
She's stuck it out for a long time, so got a lot of heart, a lot of fight in her.
I mean, we all got saved in the end, right? So
This is true.
And maybe she's a better person than I am. Yeah.
Zero Glitch 13 wants to know, since he's currently trying to get into voice overs and overall acting, where did you start, and do you have any tips for someone just getting started?
Well, that's a big question, because I think that a lot of the work I've gotten in all aspects of this industry, whether it's voiceover, commercial, film, TV, whatever it is, I've gotten through friends and through people I know and through making my own content. I think that the way our industry is going, and with voiceover, not as much, because I think that, video games, they take a long time. There's not as many people making their own content. You don't have video games you're playing on YouTube. But right. I'd say with voiceover stuff, the first thing that you probably want to do is take a class if you haven't already. I'm not sure where you live, but there are great classes in LA and New York. I'm sure there's some good stuff in Austin. You might be able to do something online where you get a microphone and you're able to record some stuff and get some feedback. But the first thing you're going to want to do is just get a reel and mess around. Go into, I've got like this little microphone that I have for auditions. I think it's called a Shure mic, and you just plug it into your iPhone, and it's pretty great quality. You just can go into your car, slam the door, plug it into your phone, and start messing around with different voices. Find copy online. If you really love Resident Evil, find a character that you really like, a scene that you really like, and just lay it down and start sending it out to agents. Right. Via email. You can also, there's different casting companies. So like LA Casting or Actors Access, create a profile on there. There's a monthly fee you pay. You can submit yourself. But it's a lot of just work you got to do on your own for a long time. And there's a teacher that I had years ago who told me that there's a million different ways to get into the industry. But as soon as one person chooses that path, it can never be used again.
That's interesting. Just way to look at it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned in all of my acting is just have fun.
Definitely.
Like play around, risk it. Like don't be self-conscious because as soon as you're self-conscious, your work's not going to be good.
Exactly.
It's very true.
So just like mess around, fuck around, be in your car, be in a closet. Like another tip that I got from my voiceover coach in college is like you can make a sound booth in your closet by like taking dirty laundry and like scattering it all around you, closing the door, and it'll suck up all the noise.
Yep, a lot of people do that. Just roll up in their closet with their clothes. So you get yourself a laptop and a decent microphone, get in the closet, and there you go. Grab a script or two and start practicing.
Exactly.
Go in your shower with a laptop webcam and record. Just kidding. That's the worst advice.
I think that's a different kind of audition for a different.
That's a different type of format.
Yeah, you might be right. I was just thinking about terrible sound quality and
the acoustics in there are wonderful.
Yeah, that was the joke.
Like opera singers.
Right. So we're going to move into Patreon questions. These come from our supporters through Patreon. And they are guaranteed that they're questions because of their support. We are going to ask their questions for sure. First one comes from Kendo Gunshop. Did you have any influences that inspired you to act?
Yes. There was a movie when I was a little girl called A Little Princess. And I've seen that movie probably like 1,000 times. And it was very magical. It's about a young girl who goes to a boarding school. Her father goes off to war. They get word that he died and she's an orphan. But then all of a sudden she meets this amazing, like, Indian magic wizard man who's not a wizard or anything. He has a cool monkey, but like, it's just, it was one of those, it was a beautiful story. It made me realize what you can do with cinema and how you can move people and you can tell stories. And that really inspired me. I think that growing up on Disney movies made me love voiceover acting before I even knew that I loved voiceover acting. Right. You know, watching Aladdin, watching Robin Hood, the animated one, like all of that stuff. So many stories you can tell in animation that, you know, you get to play characters you would never be able to play normally.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Sarah is not an old woman. You know what I mean? She's like a very beautiful, like vivacious young lady, and to be able to play like a weird old lady who's dying, like that's pretty dope. You would not be able to do that.
Yeah.
And Evie, you know, she's not a little girl.
No. She's
so
a grown woman.
Yeah, she's a grown ass woman. Very talented. And so those are the inspirations. Just being able to see the different stories that I can tell and be a part of. Giving people an escape, that's really important to me.
Definitely. Sounds fun. Yeah, fun to play other parts and everything. All right, our next question from Patreon Bailey Ritter asks, how did you feel when you got casted for the role of ZOE Baker? How does it feel to be part of an immense franchise? So you kind of answered this one before, but I guess you can get more into your feelings when you actually got the part and how that all was.
It really was startling because I walked out of the room thinking that I totally blew it, and then to get it, it felt really nice to finally get something. I mean, I've been working for so long, and I've just never done voiceover before, and I really wanted to, and to be able to do a big job like this with a director that I really liked. I mean, he directed all of the Grand Theft Auto stuff.
Yeah.
And my brother knew who he was, and it was like finally my brother like was proud of me. That was huge.
Yeah.
I will say that he chose Mia and not Zoe, and did not fail to point it out to me.
This guy.
But yeah, it was incredible. I think that when you work hard at anything and you finally get a chance to prove yourself, it's really nice.
Yeah.
So you went 8 months of working towards this project, not knowing what it was, knowing that it's obviously a horror project, and then they tell you, hey, this is Resident Evil. What was that like?
It wasn't like that. So we were working on it for like 8 months, and I was like, oh, this is just like some like Southern zombie thing.
Okay.
Like, because it doesn't have the vibe of what we consider to be Resident Evil. It's like a totally different thing. And I started getting a little bit curious when Capcom started coming in, and they were actually in, and I was like, "This is interesting."
I know those guys. I know what they do.
And
your brother probably knew. He's like, I'm on to this. I know where this is going.
I know where this is going. We were all under very strict NDAs, so we weren't allowed to talk about it with anyone. I wasn't allowed to tell Soul until it came out.
Right.
Yeah.
But when I found out, because Todd, who plays Ethan, told me, we were like around a table, and then he said something about like Resident Evil. I was like, "What?" He goes,
Wait, what are we doing?
"Yeah, this is Resident Evil." I was like, "This is Resident Evil?" He's like, "Yeah, what did you think we were doing?" I was like, "I didn't know. No one told me."
Nobody said anything.
Todd, you narc.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's funny.
What did your brother think, for since he was a longtime Resident Evil fan? What did he think when he found out you were in a Resident Evil game?
Well, he thought I was really cool. I wish I still had the text message. He was like very, very impressed. I think he was more impressed with the director. I think that he's a big fan of Naveed's. But yeah, it was great. He was wonderful. And then of course he teased me, mercilessly about my performance and anything else he could.
Yeah. That's cool.
As brothers do.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, Tony, you want to take the one from Aminotisma?
Nope. She's very particular in her name because I always get it wrong.
Oh no.
Aminotsma. I hope I did that right. I did that for her because I wanted to try to get it right, but I probably screwed it up again.
It's probably better than how I would have pronounced it. But yes, they ask, how do you learn to perform such an authentic Southern accent? I live in Georgia and have traveled through the South to Texas, and I've made many friends with the same accent, and they can't believe you're not native.
So, this question makes my heart swell because I am very harsh with myself. And I will listen to snippets of Resident Evil and Zoe's, the work I've done, and I'll like cringe. It makes me like my whole body cringe. So the fact that they thought it was authentic, that makes me feel so good. I did work hard on it, and I've, taken dialect classes. So, I think that I have a pretty good ear. And I've tried to do different Southern accents. I've done plays where I've had to be from, Arkansas or Texas, and they're all a little bit slightly different. And with this one, it's really, to me, I think that each of the characters have like a slightly different twang. But I think that also has a lot of our personalities infused into it too.
Right.
But yeah, I think just listening, I listened to a lot of tapes. We had a vocal coach that came in, and I talked to her a little bit about it. But just practice. I practiced a lot.
That makes sense, right? Get an idea, work with a coach, and then practice. Practice makes perfect.
Practice. Yeah. And I think that there's a really great, I wish I could remember the name of it right now. It's like Voice Bank or something. There's an incredible website that you can go to, and they just have real locals from whatever area you're looking for just talking.
Oh, nice. That's a good resource to have, because then you can listen and pick up and try and duplicate and replicate. So
exactly. And it's common phrases, those sorts of things are really helpful.
Yeah, the localization of the verbiage they use and everything.
Yeah, the colloquialisms.
Yep. So last question from our Patreons comes from Alexander Young. And this is actually something we haven't we've talked about it, but we haven't really got into it so much. But he wants to know, how was it working with Gage Maverick for the End of Zoe DLC?
So that was really cool because we had worked with everyone else for so long, and then for the DLC, like Gage comes out of nowhere. I was like, "Who's this guy?"
New face.
And we don't get the scripts ahead of time. We get them when we arrive on set. So it was a total surprise. He's a real sweetheart. He's got a great voice, and his accent, my God, that man is he's really, really good. But it was nice. It's like the only scene where someone takes care of Zoe.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the only time Zoe gets love.
Yeah.
I mean, he pretty much goes full Vin Diesel. He just keeps talking about family and how family's important.
Yeah. You're my family, Zoe.
It's a righteous cause. I love it.
Yeah.
He has some great lines.
Yeah, he's great.
So when you made spent all this time working on the core game, the DLC stuff, the Daughters DLC that you did, and End of Zoe, when did you, in the time frame, did you guys work on those?
That's hard to say. I don't quite remember in terms of it, but they were definitely at the end. We did the main game first.
Okay, so the main game was done. Then you probably Daughters came out relatively quick after the main game, so that should have been, I think, closer. Did you come back and do End of ZOE this year, or was it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was done during this year.
Mm-hmm.
A
couple months after the game came out.
Interesting. Were you expecting that at all? Did they say, "Hey, we've got some more content down the road for this game. Stick around"?
I think, it was sort of implied that there would be continued stuff that they were doing. I didn't know if they would use me again. Like I said, I didn't know that I lived when the movie or the game came out in January. So that was a bit of a surprise. But, I live in LA, so I'm not going anywhere.
Right. I'm here for the work.
Yeah.
It's great that she survived, too. It was all around just awesome character we really enjoyed, and it's good to see her have a happy ending.
I know. She really deserves it.
I was surprised when she was sitting there. She said, "I'd been doing this for 3 years." I was like, wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, God, what a rough life, man.
Yeah.
And then to just be discarded.
Yeah. She lost everybody except for Uncle Joe and Ethan. So
I remember that scene, too. That was really intense when all of the... God, what is his name? I guess when Chris comes and I'm there with Gage.
Right.
And they all kind of storm into the building. That I remember that being such a difficult technical thing. We had so many actors on set. We had the timing had to be perfect. People were coming in from different things. We had the helicopter. We had all of these things going on. And it was, I remember that it was just very intense that day.
Oh yeah.
Stood intense, but intense.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a good wrap up to everybody to close out the story, because you get you get Zoe's ending, you get the call from Ethan showing that he's still doing well, and then Chris comes in to be the hero that he's apparently not. So
right. I don't trust you.
Yeah. Excellent. So do you have any upcoming projects you would like or can talk about?
So I can't give you the title, but there is a very cool VR project that's coming out in January.
Oh, cool.
So I will I never tweet, but I might tweet about that. Let's see. Other projects, I'm working on a couple different things, but I can't talk about them. So, if you keep following me on social media, I will keep all of you apprised.
And that leads into where can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, perfect.
Right. So you can follow me on Instagram at Gisellarella, which is like Cinderella, but with my name. And then I think Twitter is Giselle Gilbert, which again, I never tweet, but I should get better at that because that's a thing that people do.
And we keep saying this, that everybody goes on Instagram, and I'm always saying, I need to get on Instagram more, and I never do.
Oh, it's great, man. Instagram is the way, it's it may have been ruined when Google bought it out. So they screwed up that timeline thing and they want more important posts being seen. But Instagram has helped me because I do photography for a living. And a lot of people were like, why don't you try to get work through, we know you got a lot of work. You've met a lot of people. Why not through Instagram? I was like, I don't know. That seems kind of weird, isn't it? But it turned out I've gotten to work with some great models, some great cosplayers and everything. So I was just kind of like, wow, I guess this isn't weird. This is how things are done now, I guess.
A lot of
I love Instagram. It's really it's just fun. And I like pictures. It's like a live photo album. It's wonderful.
Yeah, we had a guest at one point saying that nobody ever posts anything really negative on Instagram, because that means you have to actually stop and capture a negative moment, and people don't do that. They might talk about it in hindsight or make a quick little post about it, but nobody ever takes a picture of something negative. So,
except if you're taking a photo of the comment section on a YouTube video.
Oh God! No. Yeah,
the toxicity.
I try not to look at the comment sections, but my friend was watching a commercial. I did a YouTube thing, and they went into the comment section and pointed one out where. There were just some awful things. One person said that I looked like I had Down syndrome. Another person,
oh my God,
called me the C word 7 times, and and I'm like, off of a commercial? Really?
I just got called that today too. So,
no.
Isn't it wonderful?
I actually had someone email me about that commercial and tell me that my shorts were inappropriately short. I somehow did the wardrobe for it. I was like, I have no say.
I mean,
I'm just here to act.
You know, like that's the thing though. Like, like I've never let stuff like that bother me really, because it's just like, well, you're a keyboard warrior. You're hiding behind a computer in the safety of your own home, saying the things you wouldn't have the guts to say. Now, me, if I have a problem with somebody, I say it right to their face, but I'm not a jerk about it.
Well, I'm also like very glad these people aren't coming up to me and saying it to my face, because, like I said, I'm very sensitive. I'd probably start crying. But yeah, that's anyway.
But,
don't be
I mean, at
Giselle.
this point, do you if they're going to go out of their way to say something negative or impact your day, do you really care about what they have to say?
No.
Exactly.
Just don't feed the
Especially when
trolls.
those people, it's great because like you could just find like if they're like on Instagram and they do say something bad about you, you just go through their Instagram, look how bad their life is and what they post, and you're like, hey, I feel better about myself. This guy's nothing.
No, I just feel like, I mean, if anyone's being a total dick on social media in any form, I just know that they're very probably in a lot of pain and very sad. So
The
Pretty
empathetic
much.
approach to it. I like that.
yeah, just like Zoe, all that empathy.
Don't be mean to Giselle. Giselle's a wonderful person.
Yes, and you've done a fantastic job as Zoe in Resident Evil 7. So
Thank you so much.
yes, and thank you very much for coming on. I guess we can close out now with your last thoughts, your final thoughts, what you would like to say to the fans. Anything you'd want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me on. It was so fun. I haven't done I've had a couple of interview requests for Resident Evil, but most of them came before the game was released and I wasn't allowed to do them. So this is really cool. I had a lot of fun with you guys, and to all the fans, thank you so much for writing in your questions and for taking the time to play the game and, you know, keeping the horror genre alive. We all appreciate it.
Well, that'll conclude our episode for today. I want to give a big thank you to Giselle for taking the time to chat with us. If you would like to follow Giselle on social media, I'll leave the links down in the description. If you enjoyed this episode of the ROE Podcast and are listening on YouTube, please leave a like. And if you would like more ROE Podcasts, definitely subscribe. If you're listening on iTunes, please leave us a review and subscribe to be notified when another episode is released. The Residents of Evil is a Patreon-supported show, so if you'd like to help support the channel and unlock some other really cool perks in return, head over to patreon.com/ROE Network. I would like to give a special thank you to all of our patrons, starting with our sword key holders, Lexian, Miki, Damon Ian, Chris Arnott, Ernesto Malave, Colleen Fox, Petros Lueno, Peter Pickler, Charlie Robinson, Jeff Marco, Sarah Baxter, Whitney Niles, Amy Adams, Vil Kiss, Corey Marcoulier, May Nujian, Michael McLowan, and Warrior. On to our armor key holders, Mike Wood, Marcos Dos Diaz, Brian Salazar, The Original Fat Ass, Demetric Powell, Bryce Ray Parker, Vincent Marr, JC Wesker, Nathaniel Goring, Yazjin, Lurwin, and Tyler Seth Parsley. Up next is our shield key holders, Scott Pogue Miller, Dejisi Gagnon, Cursed Toast, Charlie April, Riley Claypool, Scott Yenos, Shane Woolwine, Kongmen Yang, and RJ Mitchell. Up next is our helmet key holders, or our key collectors, Resident Elect, Ahmed Al-Khatib, Thomas McGarry, Tom, Luke Davis, Content on Demand, Leon2394, Coon Cannon, Sebastian Buse, Bailey Ritter, Liam Davis, Umbrella Corporation, Thomas Owen, and Steve Jacobson. And lastly, our Master of Unlocking Patreon members. This is our highest tier level members: Mike Frassetti, Dustin Lewis, Kendo Gunshop, Santiago Alcantara, Trent Overton, and Proxy One. Thank you guys all so much, and if I screwed up your name, I apologize. You can yell at me in a future live stream. Thank you as always for listening, and we hope to see you back at the Residents of Evil.